Welcome back to the channel, my friends. So today I have an awesome product to share with you guys, and that is the PSIO from Cyberdyne. I'm not sure if I'm saying their name correctly, so I do apologize if I screwed that one up. But this product is for the original PlayStation. The product has been on my radar for quite some time, but has been out of my reach for a while for one reason or another. And recently I was lucky enough to be able to order one through StoneAgeGamer.com. So the PSIO is essentially a flashcart for the Sony PlayStation 1. It's similar in function to the EverDrives for classic consoles like Sega Genesis, NES, Super Nintendo, so on and so forth, or even comparable to an ODE like the Rhea or GDEMU for the Sega Saturn or Dreamcast. Now the PSIO, unlike other flashcarts, requires a system modification in order to operate. This mod is not recommended for novices to install, but it doesn't appear to be overly complex, as it just requires a single chip and several wires to be installed and a few other minor steps, but it is a very delicate process, and the process can be slightly different depending on the motherboard revision you have, from my understanding. The other thing of note is, in order to use this product, you must have a PlayStation that has a parallel port on the back to plug the PSIO into. I personally did not mod this system myself, as I ordered it as a complete solution from Stone Age Gamer that included the PlayStation already modded. They offer several ways to purchase the PSIO. They sell it on its own for $125, or you can pay them to mod your system if purchasing the PSIO through them as a bundle for $170. Or you could do like me and purchase a pre-modded system that includes the PSIO and ranges from $200 to $210 dependent upon condition of the system. I personally purchased the $210 bundle, which is the good version, and was very happy with the system and the condition that I received. Only a couple little minor scratches or scuffs, nothing crazy. Looks really good. The one thing to note if purchasing a system from them is, if you need power cables, output cables, or controllers, you need to either already have them or purchase them separately, as these bundles do not include any cables or accessories, just the modded system and the PSIO. So on to what the PSIO is. This thing uses an Atmel ARM Cortex M3 MCU and an Altera Cyclone 3 FPGA board to make the magic happen. It requires the use of an SD card in order to load your games, and can use cards from 8 GB up to 512 GB plus. So I've used numerous cards and have had no issues at all with them working. All other flash cards and ODEs seem to be more picky concerning SD cards than this device, so that was a huge plus for me, not having to go through the pain of finding an SD card that works. Definitely sweet. Now the PSIO, it uses a menu system that is highly customizable to display the games you have loaded, and the one really cool thing is you can hot swap memory cards while within the menu for even more convenience. I think that's really cool. Within this menu, you can see different information for the games you have loaded, and you have a bunch of options you can tweak with as well. One thing, you can enable fast boot, which disables the BIOS loading screen, which helps you get to your games quicker. I thought that was definitely cool. The other thing that I really like with the PSIO is, since it's not a drive replacement solution like the Rhea or GDEMU, you can still boot discs if you so choose, and can actually do so from within the PSIO menu. Now, one thing I want to point out that may seem frustrating at first is setting up an SD card and adding your games. So prior to doing this, you will need the menu system file and possibly have to update the ARM firmware. I had to do both. In order to get these files, you must have purchased, direct from the creator or through an authorized reseller. I think this may be risky to purchase one of these devices on the secondary market like eBay, because if your device is not already set up for you, you will need the email address the device was purchased from, the order number, and the serial number in order to download these things. If purchasing through Stone Age Gamer, they give you all the needed information to download this stuff. And if you do buy one on the secondary market and it's set up and you have everything ready to go, if you don't have that information, you cannot download future firmware updates. So that's one thing to be kind of wary about. But once that part's out of the way, setting up your SD card, And really that part doesn't take more than a few minutes to do. We can now add our games to the SD card. Now this is where frustration may set in if you haven't read through the documentation for the device. Myself, I typically just throw away the documentation or set it aside and try to figure things out. But with this, I definitely recommend not doing that and actually reading through the documentation that is online for it. The process is very simple. As you just drag and drop your games to the root of the SD card, just have folders for your specific game with all the files in there. Boom, throw them onto the SD card. Pretty much good to go in most instances. Now, the PSIO does support bin, ISO, and IMG files. No PBP files, obviously, as those were meant to be played on a PSP. Now, I do believe bin files will most likely be the most common people will probably use. And the one issue here is that the PSIO does not play games with multiple bin files. Sucks, doesn't it? But there is a simple solution to that problem, and they actually provide the software to easily convert multiple bin games into a single bin game, making this process fairly easy and no pain, really easy, but you had to understand that to be able to make sure that nothing was wrong. So using the PSIO Systems Console program that they provide you, you would simply go to File, then Batch Image Conversion, and select the folder with your game's bin files in it and allow the program to do its magic. Now this program by default has it set to keep a backup of the original folder of your game. That way you can retain the game with the multiple bin files and have a new folder with the game combined into one bin file. I have done this process for many games and I've not had any issues converting them. There are other operations you can use in this program as well, like converting Q files to CU2 if you need. I've not really had to use this option too much, as if you do the batch conversion on multiple bin games, it will create the CU2 file for you. Another thing while setting up your games that you'll want to do is if you have a multi-disc game, you're going to want to put all those files together into one folder for that specific game. The one thing I would suggest though is if these games do have multiple bin files, to run that batch conversion first before combining everything into one folder. So you'll have one folder for the multi-disc game instead of multiple folders. And then there's one other step you have to do with multi-disc games, and that's going to be creating the multidisc.lst file and listing within each one the full bin file's name for the discs for that game. If you do the batch conversion, it will create a multidisc.lst file for you, and you could just add to that if need be. But an example would be Lunar Silver Star Story disk1.bin. That would be listed first in the LST file, and then Lunar Silver Star Story disk2.bin would be listed next in that file. This file goes with the rest of the files for the games you've added to the SD card. And once you're within the menu, you can access to select which disk you want. If you're prompted in the game to change disks, all you do is hit the SD card to eject it and then put it back in. And if you have this all set up correctly, it will just automatically swap the disks for you. Pretty sweet, but anytime you boot it up after that, you would just select disk 2 if that's the disk you were on. Now, my time messing around with this device has been pretty fun and fairly painless, but I did read through the PDF manual first, as there is a lot of things to take in. And if you didn't know some of these things, you would definitely run into issues and either think the PSIO is faulty, or maybe you missed a step, and more than likely you missed a step. While testing this, I did run into a couple small issues. Cyberdyne, if that's how you say their name, they claim the PSIO is over 99% compatible with games released for the PlayStation, and I do believe this is quite possibly true, as they do have a list of problem games on their site, and it appears that a lot of them get addressed with firmware updates fairly often. And I've tested some games that were listed to have issues, and I did not run across any of the same problems, so that was definitely sweet. But one of the two issues I had, which was an easy fix, was actually the earlier example, Lunar Silver Star Story Complete. This game would not boot for me. I tried multiple dumps of the game, and I even dumped my own copy of the game to try, and I had no success. This is one of those things where reading the manual would have assisted me here, and it appears it was one of the sections I just kind of skimmed over because I didn't think I would need to know this stuff. But I found changing the XA/CDDA options, the audio options, to K1V2 was the fix for this particular game. Supposedly not many games will run with this option, but I've actually had all my games still run properly using it. But you can, instead of saving that option as the default, you can set it per game by actually creating an extensionless file name as that option, K1V2 as an example, and putting it with your game files on the SD card, and the menu system will recognize that and boot that particular game with that audio option. Now, one way to create a file with no extension type is to use Notepad to create a document and save it as the name you want, as the example K1V2, but put quotations around the name when saving it. It will save it as a file type instead of a text document, so it won't have any extension. And that's how this system will recognize that option you want to use. And you can set that up for each game if need be, or just those specific problem games that need one of those specific settings, and then just leave your default to the, I believe it's K1V3, might be the default there. Now, the final issue that I ran across, and I've yet to figure it out, and it's an unfortunate one, is that I have tried several copies of Pepsi Man on the PSIO, and while in-game I do not get the music playing. So talking about Pepsi Man, this is one point that I think I forgot to mention here, is that the PSIO, you can run any region you want on your system. I have an NTSC, North American PlayStation. I can run PAL games, no problem. I can run Japanese games, no problem. So this specific game, Pepsi Man, the game runs fine, but there's just no music. I've tried converting to CU2 with no success, and have tried a couple different dumps. It may just be some bad dumps I'm dealing with, but I could also be doing something incorrectly. I've tried each of the audio options as well, and it hasn't fixed the issue. I'm sure I'll figure it out eventually, and like I said, maybe it's just something I'm doing incorrectly, but I still felt it was worth pointing out this one issue that I came across that I have not been able to resolve as of yet. And that's been the only real problem I've encountered using the PSIO. Everything else was just stuff I needed to read in the manual to understand how to use this thing properly. And like I said, overall, it's not a complicated device to use. You just kind of want to make sure you understand how things work, how to format things, and all those little options that I had mentioned previously. So overall, I'm very happy to have purchased this device and have been pleased with the performance as well. The games do load quicker than if you're loading from disk, and have been fairly painless process getting everything set up once I actually educated myself on the processes and how things work. I love having these types of options from my disk-based systems, as drives do eventually go out, and it really makes it more convenient to play my favorite games for these systems on original hardware, which, playing on original hardware, holds some value to me specifically. This is a great option for someone wanting to experience PlayStation how they remember it, but just minus the discs, right? So I know there are many options out there to play PlayStation games, be it through emulation or some kind of legitimate hardware through Sony, but this is the option I really enjoy the most at this time. I feel there are no right or wrong answers to how you want to enjoy playing your favorite games, and I recognize this option will not be for everyone. But I do enjoy exploring any options that are out there and sharing my experiences with them with you guys. So I hope this video helped with sharing this option, and really do appreciate you guys spending these few minutes of your time to watch my video. Thank you, and if you could, please smash that like button, make sweet ass love to that notification bell, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And with that said, I will catch you guys next time. Peace out, bye-bye, and boom!